you said something that I thought was super fascinating, which was Agentic AI is just rebranded robotic process automation.
That was definitely a hot take. That's going to be a hot take that may or may not haunt me.
Well, it's recorded now, so
it's out there.
It's out there. We can't do anything about it.
What we're calling now Agentic AI. It is, in essence, a machine with a human in the loop. And because we haven't heard of it as end users, it appears as if the technology is new, when in fact, we've had AI for over 50 years.
Right.
CTO, CEO is not going to use AI to replace their existing workforce. The savvy executive is going to use AI to be able to continue to scale without having to continuously hire. That's how you remain competitive as you move forward.
Imagine a use case where now there is actually an agent on the executive team. Or imagine there's an agent as an independent board member.
I think it's such an interesting place to be as an executive, to think that
All right, Sidney, thank you for joining us. Really excited to talk to you today. You've got a really interesting background, the last 10 plus years in robotic process automation, which is RPA, AI, ML, like a lot of tech stuff. And of course, today, AI is all the rage everywhere in startups, in corporate innovation. And I know you're at the forefront of that as well, but with a background and a history, Spotify, BNY Mellon, Fiserv, like a whole bunch of different companies where you've done stuff. Actually, there was one, I think it's E-Trade, where you had a title of VP Global RPA, which is like a very, very specific title. So you know what you're talking about. And then when you and I spoke before, we got onto the podcast, you said something that I thought was super fascinating, which was Agentic AI is just rebranded robotic process automation. So I want to start right there. And you can explain RPA, of course, but is it really just like everybody's talking about Agentic AI? So is it really just, have we been doing this already for the last 10 years?
So that was definitely a hot take. And that's going to be a hot take that may or may not haunt me. But I believe
it's recorded now. So yeah.
Yeah, it's recorded now.
It's out there.
It's out there. We can't do anything about it. Yeah.
But I believe it is. I believe it is. And I will tell you exactly why. So in terms of robotic process automation, you can think of robotic process automation as typically, they are just machines that are able to understand rules-based workflows. So in essence, if you have clear, straightforward rules in terms of how a process is dictated, you are able to then use robotic process automation to automate that manual process. And it can be something as simple as someone who is an accountant who has to enter data into Excel, and then they have to enter that data into different systems. They have to run formulas on that data. They need to be able to ascertain different volumes of data. All of that can be automated. Now, robotic process automation has two different categories. So there's unattended automation and attended automation. The unattended automation, these are just automations that can run without a human in the loop, meaning that you can trigger the automation based on, a set of parameters, and that workflow will run automatically. And you can schedule it to run, or it can have certain other triggers other than time and date. There's the second piece of robotic process automation, which is attended automation. And that's the piece that we're talking about here. And it is, in essence, a machine with a human in the loop. And in essence, it is an agent, meaning it is I'll say a machine that has been basically built to automate a specific process, but there are certain points within that workflow where you interject a human into the automated flow. And that human could be anything from checking for exceptions. That human could be, there could be checks and balances that the human needs to make themselves before the robot continues on. And so you have these different checkpoints. And then as that agent moves along the workflow, depending on where you've placed the human in that automated loop, those are the points where basically it's either the machine working or the human working, and you're passing it back and forth. So it is in essence, I'll say, the version one of agentic, what we're calling now agentic AI, in that it is very rules based. The agentic work is also rules based, but then there are some additional things under the hood where we're making the automation more cognitive. So I would argue that agentic AI, in essence, it is attended robotic process automation that has been enhanced to a higher version so that the machine has become more cognitive in the way that it's able to interact with different systems and different processes.
Right. Maybe with cooler branding too. Would we say that
Exactly.
is agentic AI like cooler sounding than robotic process automation?
For sure, for sure. I think but it's a cool phenomenon because it goes back to seeing the progression of technology and seeing how there are so many. I mean, there are so many companies now that are diving into the AI pool, and whether it's generative AI, agentic AI, looking at machine learning, looking at natural language processing, optical character recognition. We're all diving in, but the majority of these, I'll say, solutions, technologies have existed for decades. They have just existed really on the back end and more in manufacturing and kind of in the operational piece of the enterprise. And now that operational piece is being brought to the forefront just from a pure kind of marketing, discussing it out in public sort of way. And because we haven't heard of it as end users, it appears as if the technology is new when in fact, we've had AI for over 50 years, right? as a species. So it's like we're getting to a point where we are starting to rehash some of the different technologies. And we also are really enhancing the speed, the rate at which we are able to improve these technologies as well. So I think it's a net positive, but it is interesting to hear some of the fear, some of the anxiety that comes along with the mention of these technologies, knowing that in theory they have been around, right?
Right. Yeah. And I loved how you just articulated that everybody's diving in at different points. You think about the last 2 years. What are people getting wrong when they think about intelligence systems?
Ooh, that could be in its own episode, I
That's a
think.
whole thesis, but in 30 seconds or so, tell us what everybody's getting
Yeah.
wrong
Well,
about.
I think, yeah, and I think, I mean, you articulated also well that now there's maybe a different branding around it. Ben mentioned, okay, the agentic is getting people really excited, and I think that's part of the storytelling to get the buy-in. But often, there's a lot of fear, like you said, right? And so there's so much fear. Ultimately, how do you dispel that? It's like, what are people getting wrong into that? How they're thinking about this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think there's a few things I would touch on. I think we are getting wrong the fact that it almost feels as if everyone believes that AI is something that is fundamentally different from other technologies that we currently have access to. And it is in certain ways, but I always tell everyone, really think of it as a tool. It truly is like artificial intelligence is a tool, which means it is an enabler for things that humans want to get done. And when you think of it like that, then it really dispels some of the fear, because then you say, oh, I'm using tools every single day of my life, right? I'm using electricity. That's a tool. I'm, getting in a vehicle, a motor vehicle. That's a tool, right? So it starts to dispel that fear very quickly when you say, think of it as a tool. It is something that you can use as a human to enable you in a specific activity. And that activity may be, business operations. It may be, parsing data for a generative AI bot, but it's something that's enabling you. It's helping you to be able to execute on something. And when you take that step back and you're like, oh, okay, great. So it's like a nail and a hammer in essence, right? You have to find, and then that leads to the next piece, which is, there are certain things you can use a hammer for, and there are certain things you can't, right? And that's so similar to AI. There are certain things you can use, the different subcategories, machine learning, natural language processing, generative AI, agentic AI, each of those subcategories has their, I'll say, specific set of needs that that those technologies are uniquely qualified to be able to solve. And what I believe a lot of I'll say enterprises are getting wrong is thinking that each of those subcategories is a blanket tool that can be used for any and every use case. And that is not the case at all. You really have to look at what problems am I trying to solve. And when I look at the suite of AI tools and functionality available to me, which one of those, I'll say, subcategories is going to be the most optimal to help me solve this particular business challenge?
No, I was gonna add to that. I just love how you articulated that, because often what Ben and I are seeing in corporate innovation, corporate venturing, really what those obvious limitations are sometimes don't get articulated well enough. That if you can get past that level and really understand how you described it as this tool that enables, I think that it helps build a lot more momentum in building the case in applying this in the right context of corporate innovation and corporate venturing.
Yeah, I think I see it. I see it as people look at it now. Partially the rebranding. I mean, I think ChatGPT just unlocked everybody's brain to say, oh my goodness, like this will solve all my problems." So it's like a panacea sort of vibe. What level of um, chaos, let's say, are you seeing inside of large organizations? Looking at this and saying, we have to do AI. I mean, we hear that, from C-level folks, like go do AI, and people are kind of, I think it's high, but I want to hear your take on what level of chaos and sort of randomness are we seeing, or are we getting to a place, or how do we get to a place perhaps where organizations say, okay, well, this AI thing is out of the box. We're not putting it back in the box, but we better have a strategy, a system, something that guides the work we do, so we don't have a 10,000 person company with 10,000 people using 10,000 different tools in different directions.
Yes, that is one of I would say, the biggest challenges in terms of chaos that I am seeing from an enterprise level, which is C-suite executives wanting to find an entry point into AI. And to your point, saying we need to have AI. We need to, if we want to remain relevant in our specific industry, our specific vertical, we've got to get on the ball. But that's where it stops. You would be surprised the number of companies that the only the only direction that has been given has been, we need to be doing AI. And
Do it.
that,
Just
I
do
will
it.
tell you, exactly, just do it.
Yeah,
And
just
I
do it.
will tell you, I
Sounds
think
cool.
that is and I think it's the wrong approach. It is the wrong approach. Because when you think back to that first kind of analogy I used, it's a tool. So what business objectives are you looking to solve? And those should be both short term and long term. But you don't want to start with, we just need to do AI. It should be, what are our key performance indicators that are showing us that we either need to pivot or we need to stay the course in terms of where we are today from an operational perspective. And once I understand that, then I start saying, okay, what are the tools that can help me to either right the ship, turn a different direction, right, in terms of where I hope to take us. And that starts to, when you start with the business objective followed by, okay, what is the right technology? That's when you really start to unlock the full potential of artificial
Right.
intelligence.
It's just
Because at that
fundamentals.
point, yes, you're
Yeah.
no longer saying, let's just throw a bunch of licenses at everyone and hope for the best. You're saying, these are specific pillars that we are going to focus on as an organization. And we have benchmark metrics that we can benchmark against, which means when we do implement generative AI or we do start to build our own machine learning models, we have a way to understand whether or not we are moving the needle, right? And that's the other piece, because the chaos is also around, well, how do you measure these things? Like, how do you measure the success? How do you measure the return on investment? And it comes from, you have to make sure you understand what you're trying to solve. and what metrics are applicable to understand how you're bridging the gap, right, from current state to future state as a result of implementing AI.
Yeah. And Ben is all about focused chaos. And what we've seen, we've helped a lot of, corporate innovation leaders and corporate venture professionals. It's also, what is that kind of outcome you're buying, right? Are you buying intelligence? Are you buying speed? Are you buying decision making? And so often when people are saying, okay, let's just do AI, right? And you articulated too very well about, it's a tool that enables, and you have metrics, but sometimes you can index in one area. And that's where we see sometimes corporate venturing is maybe the right use case because it's a bit beyond the core, that we could help accelerate the maybe comfort level of, okay, that makes sense. We're buying speed because it's beyond the core. Or okay, if it's internally, maybe we're buying, intelligence, and we want to make sure intelligence is closer to the core. So have you had any experience even with just what you've seen in the market and even what you're doing right now? Does that resonate? Like it's really trying to articulate one big outcome of what you're buying?
I have seen, I will say, a mix of both. I have seen a mix of both. So I have seen enterprises where the executives are they understand exactly what they are aiming for in terms of whether it's efficiency, whether it is data quality, whether it is improved regulatory compliance. So they have a very straight and narrow path that they want to walk, and they want to leverage AI to be able to make sure that they meet that need. There are others who are unsure, and I would say the majority of businesses that I speak with are in that category because they're unsure about the technology itself and the capabilities of AI. And because also I think it does have a lot to do with the marketing, where there are so many different levels and types of AI, but everything is marketed as AI, which becomes confusing for the end user. And so there are a lot of companies that say, I want to do AI, but I have no idea where to start, because should we start with building our own machine learning models? Should we start with leveraging, large language models that are already out there? Should we start with generative AI? Like where is that starting place? And I tell everyone, I think goes back to that business need, but where do you see a need in your existing practice where there's a short-term win that you can pull out, that you can extract out if you were to implement AI, but there's also a long-term play. So once you get that win, you could scale beyond that kind of proof of concept to different business units, and then eventually the entire organization. And that's the lens I think that we should be looking at AI through, which is how can I get those short-term gains, but simultaneously unlock the door to the rest of the enterprise and a true digital transformation across every single business unit as a result of kind of starting in one small area of the business.
Right. So, where do you sit on the notion that AI, particularly the agentic AI, the agentic stuff, will replace the humans? I know you've described it as a tool, so it strikes me like you're probably on that side. But we do see that conversation happening. We see it with startups. The 2-person startup as opposed to the 20-person startup, because it could be 2 people or 1 person with agents, and we've lived it and we've seen that actually work to some extent. But in a big company, how much of it are they really thinking, well, wait a second, let's bring these tools in and actually then lower headcount or not hire as many people as we thought?
It has been such a whirlwind to see how the debate around workforce enablement, replacement of humans as AI is evolving. I will tell you the side that I have been on. So I had pitched actually a few years ago that, and I still believe this today, I believe that we are going to see in the next 3 to 5 years a convergence of companies that are, in essence, built from teams that are a combination of humans and machines. And what I mean by that is a truly hybrid, like digitally hybrid team, where you will have team members who have names, Rebecca, Andy, and it's a robot. And it is, kicking off the quarterly sales report that you need. And Andy, who is your digital robot peer, is sending you an email, a personalized email saying, "Hey, Sidney, the Q2 sales report, that we need by Friday. Here it is. I did some extra cool pivots that I haven't done before with the data. Do you want to take a look and let me know if you like them?" I see, like, that is where we are going. Now, do I think that that's going to replace existing humans? I think it's a double-edged sword. I believe that the savvy CTO, CEO is not going to use AI to replace their existing workforce. The savvy executive is going to use AI to be able to continue to scale without having to continuously hire. That's, I believe, where we should be going. Meaning, can I continue to double the amount, triple the amount of sales or products or features that I'm rolling out to the public without simultaneously having to triple my workforce, right? My operational stance. That I believe scaling in a way where you have, and then think about the amount of subject matter expertise you gain as a company where you have the majority of your staff that has tenure, that has that historical knowledge, and you're combining that with the power of AI. That's where I see us going. Truly, like a true hybrid where you have an incredible wealth of knowledge from humans that have been in your organization for years, and you combine that with the cognitive powers of AI, and there you go. That's how you remain competitive as you move forward.
Yeah, I know. I love that positive approach. I mean, I want to maybe ask a bit deeper into the time frame you just mentioned. I mean, I think, at least from my perspective, I think we're going to get there like within 2 years. It's not going to be 3 to 5 years. And I think you're also going to see different structures, leveraging the talent and all that institutional knowledge into other types of organizations, be it kind of spin outs beyond the core, leveraging, maybe the headcount is frozen, but these individuals are going to be in this new form of maybe native AI divisions, departments, ventures. There's, I think, a lot of debate that's going on, obviously, at the board level of some of these organizations. How do we get a competitive edge, leveraging this to go on the offense? And earlier you talked about building a little bit momentum in that short term. And I think as long as they have the long-term vision on how this could be related to growth and not as a defensive play, I think there's really strong alignment of just really empowering those people that are on the team to become almost bionic.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think the time horizon, I will say, it is going to depend on whether or not a company has a visionary leadership. And I can't stress that enough, because I have personally worked at companies where we had these incredible visionary ideas that have now come to the forefront, and other companies are executing on that we never executed on. And we didn't execute on them because we were blocked by leadership. And that I can't stress that enough. The companies that are truly going to have the competitive edge that you are mentioning, Marcus, in the future, it's going to be a visionary CEO or nothing. Like, I believe that is going to be a critical imperative for the majority of companies moving forward, that if you do not have a visionary, CTO, chief data officer, the chief executive officer, you're going to be in a world of trouble, because the technology is moving so quickly. Even hesitation for a month or 2 months could put you drastically behind your competition. And that's across every industry, across every vertical.
Yeah. And to me, it's so challenging, because I think even with the visionary leader who goes to their employees, imagine that town hall, and they say, we're not going to hire any more people ever. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but for a moment, we're not going to hire any more people ever. We're hiring agents. There's Andy, there's Rebecca, there's Tom, whatever it is. And you all get to stay, right? The employees in the town hall. I'm not cutting half the staff and replacing you. I'm empowering you with new employees, new members on your team, but these people are robots. So they're agents. I think the fear still for the 10,000th person inside of a large 20,000 person org is just so high, where they're like, I'm losing my job. There's no way. I mean, I'm sure I might have some domain expertise, but now the robot can read everything we have and everything we've ever done and know all of it all the time. So I think even visionary leader, I agree, you need that. But I don't know how they push it down in a way where people genuinely feel empowered by that and not, this is just nonsense, like BS, and I'm losing my job. They're just not couching it that way.
Yeah, it's that dance between understanding human behavior and then putting the dynamics of, operations, business, strategic, positioning yourself strategically in the market, layering that on top of human behavior and being able to say, what is the right tone that I need to strike when I am talking about the evolution of our company, our product offerings, our service offerings, in the framework of modernization, but also it's modernization, but it's simultaneously evolution. And I think the right way to frame it for your employees is really to talk about, we're now in a time where being able to be adaptable is a true core skill. And that will really resonate, not only just in your daily day-to-day work that you do with your current employer, but even as you move out into the marketplace as a job candidate, being able to say that I am adaptable, I have the ability to work with agentic AI, I have the ability, that is going to be a valuable skill set moving forward. And I think that's the way to position it as, yes, we are enhancing the way that you go about your daily work within your given role, but we are also giving you the skills that are going to make you competitive in the job market. And anyone who is not continuously upskilling in their current role, when they go back onto the job market, it's going to be a hard journey, right? And that's, I think, the way to place it, as these are skills that are going to serve you in your career progression, right? Because this is the way that every industry is moving, whether people are on board or not. The train is moving, right?
Yeah.
Are you getting on?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, this is such an important conversation, and I think I love the comment as well about how to empower people. We have a portfolio company called Work Learn Labs, which effectively is kind of applied AI education to really enable people to build their own blueprints to be kind of leveraging these tools. But the one thing we haven't really touched on, and maybe it's, Ben described it really well, being at that town hall and kind of pushing down, the fear might seep in. What about the fear at the executive level? Right? Imagine a use case where now there is actually an agent on the executive team, or imagine there's an agent as an independent board member. And, there's a lot of also, how do you manage those expectations? Because Sidney, you said one of the key unlocks here is having a visionary leader, but imagine that individual now also having to sell that to the board or an executive team that also maybe has different motivations or really a different way of even taking decisions going forward.
I think it's such an interesting place to be as an executive, to think that I do think, to your point, that is where we're headed. I fully foresee having a board where there is a digital board member, executive board member. I fully see having a company where you may have a member of the C-suite that is an agent, a robot. What it will take, it's a visionary leader, but it's more than that. It's someone who would say, this is an agent that is now, let's say, for example, my CTO. My CTO is now an AI agent, but how can I leverage that to the organization's advantage this is because you also have to think of it this way. I am a human. I still have human needs. Like I can't work 24 hours a day. I have to go to sleep at some point, right? I have to take a break and drink water, eat food. As myself as a CEO, I'm thinking I can really work 24 hours a day. Like I can leverage. Yes, I can leverage my digital board member to clone myself to become, I can have a digital twin. Like that's the space where, but that's truly where innovation, it's about thinking outside the box and saying, how can I maximize my potential as a human through these technologies, right? And that's where it becomes really interesting because at that point, the sky is the limit, right? Now, as long as you have the right guardrails in place from a security, compliance, risk perspective,
Yeah.
right? You
Minor
can do
point.
all of those things,
Yeah.
right? Minor points, but
Right.
you can do all those things as well, right? You can bring your security, your risk and compliance organizations right along with the journey. They should be there lock and step from the very first proof of concept that you do. They should be in that room, right? Having the conversations because then you're maturing out the org's ability to take this on in every single facet, right? To manage expectations internally and externally from the very beginning. And that's going to be the key. It's about, can I amplify my ability to really move the organization forward by leveraging these agents? And then can the organization as a whole, can we see a seismic shift as a result of saying, yes, we do have a hybrid human C-suite, right? It's not just the workforce below. It's the C-suite. It's the board members, right? We're maximizing our potential at every single level of the organization. And then what type of competitive edge does that give us, right? In the marketplace when we have a team where whether it's the C-suite, whether it's our executive, it's our leadership, our managers, our directors, everyone, our analysts, we're all working 24 hours a day. What does that do in terms of our market edge, right? It's just a different lens to see the world through and a different lens to see business through at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I'll just add also, I think there's also the piece on the ecosystem on the outside. You're seeing other organizations that have similar visionary leadership and maybe similar cultures and how they define growth innovation are partnering, right? Like, just recently you see Shopify, Stripe, Coinbase kind of partnering with a stablecoin, kind of offering into their core innovation. And so, Ben and I are seeing this a lot with respect to kind of spin outs, but also in bigger ecosystem partnerships by leading industry companies that are leveraging AI in their workflows.
Yeah, I believe we're going to see a lot more of that as the technology continues to evolve. Business needs continue to evolve. The demand that we receive from our customers continues to evolve. We are going to start going to see kind of a coalescing of different skill sets, functionalities, offerings, and they may start to fall under, one parent company umbrella. I think we're going to see more and more of that as we kind of evolve what it means to do business. I hate to say in the digital age because we've been in the digital age forever, but I'll say what it means to do business in an age where the technology is moving at such a rapid clip that now expediency is a currency, right? As a business owner, as a business leader, it's like, how can I expedite my understanding of the technologies, but also the implementation of the technologies, right? That's going to be the key moving forward.
I was going to say quickly, just what I was trying to articulate there really is the power of co-creation within with the agents, co-creation on the outside as well. But sorry, Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, no, are you seeing specific departments or use cases within large organizations taking up AI more successfully? There's more and more data out there now saying companies go all in, they run a bunch of pilots, they all fail, they kind of give up on it. And maybe those companies then ultimately fall behind those that figure it out. But if you were to go into a large organization and say, the best starting place is the dev team who can use, Cursor or whatever it is to help them write code. No, the best use case is efficiency for marketing teams because they have to, use Gen AI to generate ads. Okay, where in your mind is the best place to try to strategically execute pilots that have a higher likelihood of success?
Great question. I would say finance is the first.
Mm. Okay.
Finance. And it's the rationale behind that is because there are still so many manual processes. When you look at an accounting department, a procurement department, your accounts receivable, your accounts payable, the sheer amount of manual processes would astound you. And those are I would say the majority of the time, they're a mix of rules, very rules based, but also there's some cognitive, someone needs to have make a decision, a human decision. But those are the perfect places because you have all of your rules. So great, we can easily build a workflow for that. There are cognitive decisions that need to be made. Okay, great. We can build, a custom machine learning model for that. And typically there is also still a high lack of digitization of documents within finance. And that's a great area to start because the technology has become, I'll say, very, very astute in terms of drawing out, of basically taking unstructured data, being able to structure it, and then being able to pull out the elements that you need, and then being able to automate those elements and push them further upstream or downstream in the workflow. So the tech is right there in terms of finance. And those use cases are usually low-hanging fruit because they are relatively easy to automate, but they have very, very high returns in terms of data quality, process efficiency, giving time back to your stakeholders so that they can do more value-added work.
That's a great answer too, but one I haven't really heard. It's follow the money. If you're going to make the case for a bigger budget, help solve their problems to start with. But, I think the counter to that is that obviously is very close to the core, but it's a very important part of any strategic decision group, right? Is the finance department. But yeah, I know it's interesting. And I always think it always become back to like a blended approach, right? Is get some momentum there, but also can you show some of the growth that's leveraging in other areas of the organization?
Absolutely. That snacked approach is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, I didn't think you were going to say finance either. That's super interesting, but I think follow the money, and then also if you can make a business case with a CFO, let's say, then it's hard to argue when the chief marketing officer, or chief sales officer, or chief growth innovation officer comes and says, "Hey, I need budget to try stuff over here. It worked over there with you. You got an ROI. Let us take a swing at it." Hard to argue then with who a CFO who's actually implemented AI and seen a return.
Yes. It's such a critical component of any enterprise is being able to have have your finance department run like a well-oiled machine, and you can really supercharge finance. It's the area that I have seen, I will say, the largest ROI in terms of return. Like the largest returns typically are in finance, just because so much of the work is manual, and also because so much of the work is as you said, impactful to the organization in a really meaningful way.
I'm surprised by that, but it's really, but now I'm learning stuff, which is great.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think also when you think about how do you get people on board with just the governance of some of these implementations, or even how you structure this incentives. And, I think if you're able to get that finance department getting those sort of wins, and it's, look, we've enhanced the data quality like you described, we can now do a lot more. Maybe it also generates more, free cash flow from the lack of the cost reductions. That could also be, help fund, to Ben's point earlier, other groups when they're trying to make the case. Or it could be even I think a lot of strategic finance leaders have often been overlooked in what their role is for growth innovation. And I think it is also maybe a call to action for them because they're getting all these pitches. If they took ownership and really drove the agenda, that could strategically also help their conversations at the executive level.
Absolutely.
All right, Sidney. So Agentic AI is cooler, rebranded RPA, sort of. Hot take number one. We're almost at the end of our conversation. What's something else maybe that you believe about this space that you would surprise other folks in terms of where this is going, pitfalls, opportunities? Give us one more sort of hot take and to wrap us up.
The biggest hot take that I have is that I believe we are going to start seeing, I don't want to say the downfall, but I think we are going to start seeing consolidation. I'll say that consolidation of kind of this realm of AI where we have expanded it now to include. I'll give you an example, and this is definitely a hot take. We've expanded generative AI to now say like, oh, we need prompt engineers, and I'm like, that's going to go away. I'm sorry, but when we talk about
prompt engineers are going away,
I believe that is going to go. Yes. And I would tell you why. Because that can be automated. There is not a reason to have a prompt engineer. I believe that will be the first thing to go away. Because let's think about it. What is prompt engineering? It is literally just making sure that you have structured the language, whatever language you are prompting in, English, Spanish, whatever, in such a way that you've structured the syntax in such a way where a machine will be able to extract the context and the meaning that you have intended from that phrase. That can be automated. That does not need to be done by a human. So that is a hot take, but I will stand on that. I believe that will be the first thing to go will be
prompt engineering. Meanwhile, jobs are being posted for prompt engineers. Well, let me ask you one more question. So I think it was just recently I saw the term, we're changing the term prompt engineer to context engineer. Is that stupider, smarter? Doesn't matter. It's still going away.
It's a rose by any other name. It's the same thing.
Right. The nomenclature is the same. Yeah.
Right. It's a prompt. It's a context. It's a this and that. It's like, okay, guys, like what we are talking about is you as a human are basically trying to input values into a machine, and you want to make sure that the machine understands those values relative to the outcomes, right? The outcomes that you are looking for. There's nothing to say that you can't automate that. Like that, you could easily have a machine that could say, oh, I understand context, right? I am astute. I have, machine learning. I've learned what the context of different things are relative to the rest of the world. And now that I have, because what is human context? Human context is nothing more than the learnings we have extracted as a combination of our personal lives and learnings through that way, structured, kind of intelligence that we've gleaned from the world around us, and then education, whatever formal or non-formal education. It's a combination of those things. Once you boil all of those down, those are nothing more than knowledge bases, right? So all you have to do is get the knowledge bases in place to enable a machine to have the same level of, I'll say, awareness, contextual awareness that a human has. And I definitely think it's feasible because as humans, our brains are in essence a mini computer. It's computing all of our experiences, everything we've learned. It's just about, do you have the right knowledge bases at your disposal or not, whether you're a human or a machine, right?
Well, thank you, Sidney, for all the provocative hot takes. We definitely need to get you back in for 2026 hot takes, but thanks again.
Yeah, we really appreciate the time. Thank you, Sidney.
Absolutely. Great speaking with you.